Okay, so there's a few things that you're going to need to be able to do in order to draw a rose. You're going to need to be able to draw a circle, an oval, and you're going to need to be able to draw this. This is a profile view of a rose. It's a simplified form. Essentially a bunch of triangles that fit inside one another. So there you have it, essentially a rose. You're also going to need to draw wavy lines, curved lines. So you get the idea. All right, here's another way to look at a rose before we move too quickly. A rose is essentially a series of cylinders that fit inside of each other. Okay, the reason I give you so many examples in this video of the structure of a rose, it's because it's important to understand the structure so that you can draw a rose at any given time. You don't need a reference, you can just draw a rose because you understand it. And that is my goal for this video. And here's a third and final way to think about a rose. I'm basically doing the cylinder thing, except I've made it a little more curved and given it a little more personality, so it looks like a bunch of hearts that fit inside one another, and we're getting closer and closer to the look of an actual rose. When we do our final product, it's going to be not simply just hearts, but the petals are going to have wavy edges, and that's going to really make it look like a rose, just like this. So essentially with a rose we have a circle, and inside we have an oval, looks kind of like an eye. And if we draw a line through the middle, just above that halfway point is another oval or circle, which is like your core, the core inside the head of cabbage or lettuce, if you will. So every rose has something like this. So if you understand this structure, you'll be able to predict and draw a rose at any given time, and that's what I want you to be able to do. So we're going to draw our circle, then our oval, and then our little circle just above the halfway point. Okay, once you have that structure, I'm going to reduce the opacity and draw over the top of that. Okay, so this bottom part, this is what I like to call the cup of the rose. It's where the egg or the oval rests in. So I would say this is one major element to a rose, this little cut part. So I'm drawing this lip of this petal with a split in it, and underneath is the bottom of the cup. So the core of the rose fits into this cup. Alright, now I'm going to draw the core. So I'm going to start by making a loop, this little loop. Okay, and the core is usually tight, so I'm going to draw another loop. And you can add some straight edges to it, some points to it, and it gives it more personality. It makes it more interesting, because you want to avoid sameness. Okay, a rose has different types of edges, all different kinds, and you don't want every petal to be the same. Okay, so you can start building from here. So you see me making another petal. And as you've already observed, I'm sure, that petals get looser and looser the further away from the core they are. So they start to flare out and bend down, but in the core it's more tight, more upright. So here we see our cylindrical core. And we have a couple of petals getting looser around that core. Okay, just like that. You see how it works. Okay, now I'm going to keep building. And I'm going to add interesting edges. Okay, they're not all the same again. Okay, so we're going to add another petal. We're going to make it interesting, different than the other petals, and it's going to wrap around here. And you can layer in as many petals or as few petals as you want. It's really up to you. Okay, so now this part I want you to pay attention to. Okay, so this is like a key petal that wraps around the front of the rose, and it flares out and down, and it's kind of like it's one of the focal points of the rose. So you definitely want to include that into your rose structure. It is a prominent feature in the front of the rose. Okay, now I'm going to keep adding more petals, and they're going to flare out even more. Okay, so the core is pretty much established, and now everything else that I add to it on top of that is gravy. Just more and more petals, and they're going to flare out more and more as I keep drawing out and around the core. Okay, this is a little too big. I wanted to reduce it. Actually, apparently I need to erase all of it. Okay, redrawing it here. And this is, as you can see, it's trial and error. You don't always get it right the first time. If it doesn't look right, erase it and redraw it until it looks right to you. You'll definitely want to experiment with this until you get it right. Okay, and so now I'm drawing petals that go around the cup, underneath the cup. So that's key to take notice of. Flaring down. And here's another wavy line. Just keep drawing out. Drawing interesting looking petals, interesting shapes, interesting lines. Whatever looks good to you. So now I'm going to erase my underdrawing, the circle, the oval, and the core, so that that's out of the way. Now I'm just going to use a few curved lines to add some leaves. About 3 will do it, 3 major leaves, just like that. If they don't look right at first, again, just go ahead and erase them, redraw them until it looks good to you. And I added 3 little leaves at the bottom that are just little leaves that are growing, starting to grow. So now I'm in Procreate. I'm in the iPad app, and I'm using a thicker inking pen, and it tapers. When you start drawing, it draws a thin line and gets thicker, and it's really good about tapering. That means going from thick to thin. So I like to use that because it gives my rose a dynamic look. It gives it a more realistic and interesting look than just regular lines. Okay, so I'm going to just keep going until I trace every single line, making adjustments if I need to, just like that. Okay, shrinking that petal down so it suits my liking. Okay, now I'm just finishing off these outer petals. And as you can see, I do this a lot. I do like a curved line, flares up to a point, and then curves again. So make sure you include curves, a few points, a few notches. There's a notch right there in that petal that I just did. It adds to the realism of the rose. Remember, a rose is not perfect, so your drawing doesn't have to be perfect. It's organic, it's real, and real things aren't generally perfect. You know, there's flaws and imperfections, and that's what makes them look amazing. So don't be worried about your flaws and imperfections in your drawings. Actually, that's what makes up your style. If you drew perfectly every time, your drawings would look like a photograph, and that would be really boring. Nobody wants to look at photographs all day. They want to see your artistic style. So embrace your mistakes, embrace your style. Okay, that just about does it. There you get a great shot of my red hair. Okay, now I'm going to take out my underdrawing completely just to reveal the bold lines. And now I'm going to color it with an airbrush pen, red, and I'm starting out light so that I can have pink highlights. Okay, and I'm going to go in later with a dark red to put in my darkest darks, my shadows. Okay, so they were going to fit in the recesses of the petals. Okay, on the inner walls, around the edges of the petals. Because remember, the petals are going down and inside to the core of the rose, and they're curving up and around and down to the outside. And so the middle of the petal is going to have the highlight. Okay, so again, I'm drawing the red in the recesses. Okay, where the places that are hard to get to in the rose. Okay, so it just keeps getting lighter as we move out and away from the inner core. Just like that. And you know, I'm not really, as you can see, my coloring is not very computer-like. It's not perfect. It's kind of scratchy, and I like it that way. It gives it some flavor. It gives it some style. Okay, it's interesting, unique. It's not like everybody else's. Alright, now just finishing off the leaves. The inner, again, recesses of the leaves that are going into the core, or it's going to be darker on the inside. Okay, there you have it.